A billionaire disguised himself as a homeless man and sat on a bench for days, and only one person stopped. A 7-year-old girl with a sandwich. 2 days later, her entire life changed, forever. But what no one knew was, she had just unlocked a secret buried for generations. And the people who wanted it kept very quiet. Until now. The wind on Elbridge Avenue always seemed a little sharper in late November. It knifed between the brick buildings, turned puddles to mirrors, and carried the city's silence straight through the bones of anyone standing still too long. On the corner, just beneath the old bakery that hadn't sold anything in 2 years, a man sat alone on the edge of a loading dock. His coat was wool but worn thin at the elbows, and the soles of his shoes flapped slightly when he moved his feet. He looked like a dozen other men you could find in that part of town. Quiet, shivering, ignored. Most people didn't even glance at him. They had their reasons. Some were afraid. Some told themselves he was a con. Some just didn't see him at all. But a little girl did. Her name was Mara. She was 9 years old, wore second-hand boots with one red lace and one blue, and walked that block every afternoon after school to meet her older brother at the corner. Mara saw the man 4 days in a row. Always in the same spot. Always quiet. Always alone. She didn't say anything at first. Just looked. Not out of pity. Kids like Mara didn't feel pity the way adults did. What she felt was something simpler. Recognition. Loneliness knows its own. On the 5th day, she brought a sandwich. Peanut butter and jelly on thick wheat bread, wrapped in wax paper with clumsy tape holding the corners closed. She'd made it that morning, hiding the sandwich in her backpack before her mother could see. They didn't have much at home, and food wasn't something you gave away lightly. But she'd done it anyway. That afternoon, she crossed the street alone and walked right up to the man. He didn't see her at first. She stood there, quietly, sandwich in her mittened hands. When he finally looked up, there was no surprise in his face. Just a stillness, as if he'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. "I made this," she said. "I didn't put anything weird in it. Just the good kind." The man blinked. For a moment, it looked like he wasn't going to take it. But then his hands moved slowly, as if the cold made everything harder. "Thank you," he said. "You don't have to say anything back," Mara replied. "Just don't leave it on the ground. Please." He gave the faintest nod. She turned and left. That night, the man unwrapped the sandwich in the quiet dark behind a dumpster behind the bakery. He didn't eat all of it. He wrapped up half and placed it carefully inside his coat pocket. He had eaten in every kind of restaurant you could name. Dined in cities from London to Singapore. He knew what a $1,000 meal tasted like. But this sandwich. This was the first time in 3 years anything had tasted like mercy. 2 days later, Mara's mother was late getting home. She was usually back from her cleaning job by 6, but by 7, there was no sign of her. Mara waited by the window, chewing her thumbnail. Her brother, Theo, paced with his phone in hand, trying to call. It was almost 8 when the knock came at the door. Mara jumped. Theo opened it, tense. Outside stood a tall man in a clean wool coat, not a wrinkle on it. His shoes were polished. A black car idled behind him, driver waiting. And next to him, Mara's mother. Safe. Confused. Holding a paper bag full of groceries she hadn't bought. "Evening," the man said, looking directly at Mara. "I'm sorry to intrude. I believe this belongs to you." Mara stared. It was him. Cleaned up. Shaved. Standing straighter. Eyes clearer. "I thought you might worry," he said softly. Theo looked from the man to his mom. "Who are you?" The man glanced down at Mara. "I think you know who I am," he said. Mara didn't say a word. But the sandwich, the one she gave away 5 days ago, was folded neatly in her memory. And something in her chest clicked into place like the turning of a lock. The man stepped inside only after Mara's mother nodded her permission. He moved with quiet confidence, like someone used to spaces with marble floors and silent doormen. But his eyes kept flicking toward Mara, not as if he expected anything from her, but as if she were the one whose permission he was waiting for. They all sat at the small kitchen table. The apartment was warm but cramped. An old fan clicked in the corner. A single overhead bulb buzzed quietly. Mara's mother set down the grocery bag the man had given her. Eggs, milk, cheese, 2 loaves of bread, real butter. "Tell me what this is," she said. Not unkindly, but firmly. She was a woman who'd scrubbed floors for 12 hours that day, and now a man who looked like he belonged to another world entirely was sitting at her table. "My name is—" he paused. "Well, for now, just call me Ben." "Okay, Ben," she said, folding her arms. "You followed me home?" "I made sure you got home safely," he corrected. "There's a difference." Theo leaned forward, arms tense on the table. "You were sitting on the street 2 days ago." Ben nodded. "Yes. You looked like—" He stopped. "I know how I looked," Ben said, evenly. "That was the point." Mara's mother frowned. "What point?" Ben looked at Mara. "She gave me a sandwich." Her mother blinked. "She what?" "She crossed the street," he said, "and gave a stranger food. Not because anyone told her to. Not because it was safe. She did it because it was kind. And that is rare." Theo scoffed. "So what? You're one of those YouTubers doing social experiments." Ben chuckled. "Not even close." He reached into his coat and took out a small leather folio. When he opened it, he pulled out a document, slid it across the table. It was a bank check. A real one. Written for $50,000. Mara's mother stared at it like it might explode. Theo's jaw dropped. "What is this?" Ben looked at them calmly. "It's a thank you." Her mother's voice came out brittle. "A thank you for what?" "A sandwich." Ben folded his hands. "For seeing me." The room fell silent. Mara looked up at him. "Are you really rich?" Ben smiled. "I suppose I am." Her mother shook her head slowly. "What is this, a game? You pretend to be homeless, a kid gives you food, and then what? Now you give her a prize." "It's not a prize," Ben said. "It's a seed. And I'm not here to disappear after one check. I'm here to offer something more lasting." Theo narrowed his eyes. "Why us?" Ben paused. 3 years ago, he said, I disappeared from my own company. Not legally. Not in the press. Just walked away. I had everything, shares, penthouse, the works. But I didn't know who I was anymore. People saw me as an asset. An opportunity. A wallet. He looked down at his hands. I wanted to know what I was without all of it. Mara's mother stared. So you threw yourself on the street. He shook his head. I didn't throw anything. I went looking. For what? Ben smiled again, but there was no amusement behind it. For someone real. Later that night, after Ben left with a promise to return the next day, Theo stared at the check still sitting on the kitchen table. No way this clears, he said. It's probably fake. But it wasn't. The next morning, Mara's mother went to the bank, trembling with anxiety. The teller called the manager. The manager made a phone call. And then he returned, wide-eyed, saying, Ms. Mendez, this is legitimate. Mr. Hale's personal account has no withdrawal limits. You can deposit this today. She did. By that evening, they had groceries for the month, rent paid through spring, and for the first time in over a year, hot water that stayed hot. Ben came back the next day. And the next. Sometimes in a suit. Sometimes in jeans and an old jacket. But always with the same look in his eyes when he saw Mara. Gratitude. And one afternoon, he asked if they could take a walk. Just the two of them. They walked down Elbridge Avenue, where the air always seemed colder. Past the old bakery. Past the laundromat where half the dryers ate quarters. Down toward the community center where paint peeled off the walls in chunks. He stopped and pointed at the center's chain-link fence. "I used to come here when I was a kid," he said. "Back when it had a roof that didn't leak. Back when it meant something." Mara looked up at him. "What happened to it?" Ben shrugged. "The city forgot. People forgot." She nodded solemnly. "Like they forgot you on the bench." He looked at her for a long moment. "Exactly." He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded blueprint. "I want to fix it," he said. "Not just the building. The block. The bakery. The old school on 7th. Everything." Her eyes went wide. "You want to fix the whole neighborhood?" "Yes. And I want to name it after you." Mara's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You didn't just feed me, Mara. You reminded me what I was supposed to be doing with all this money. All this time." He crouched beside her. "So I'm asking you to help me." "Help you how?" "Tell me what needs to be done. What matters? Who matters? I'll bring the money. You bring the heart." She nodded slowly. And he smiled. "Good. Because you're going to be the reason this whole city remembers what it forgot." But across the street, parked in a dull gray car with tinted windows, a man lowered his camera. He zoomed in on Ben's face. Then on Mara's. He spoke into a small earpiece. "We found him." The man in the car didn't blink as he zoomed in on Ben's face again. The lens caught a fleeting expression, one only a trained eye would recognize. Not guilt. Not fear. Control. The kind of calm that came from someone used to being watched. The kind of calm that said, "Go ahead and look, I've already planned for it." The man in the car adjusted his earpiece. "Target confirmed. Hale's alive. Looks like he's resurfaced publicly." A voice crackled back. Cold. British. "And the girl. She's just a kid. Local. No connections." A pause. "There are no justs, Mr. Farron. Watch her. Record everything. If he's naming projects after her, she's leverage. And if she's leverage, then she's a threat," Farron finished quietly. There was no reply. Just the click of a line going dead. Back across the street, Mara and Ben sat on the edge of a low brick wall in front of the old community center. Her legs swung under her seat. His briefcase rested beside him, unopened, untouched. "I don't want anything named after me," she said. Ben tilted his head. "Why not?" "I don't want people staring. I just want things to work." He smiled at that. "You're wiser than most adults I know." Mara looked at the cracked sidewalk. "My mom says people with money always want to put their names on stuff." "She's not wrong," he admitted. "But this isn't about ownership. It's about memory." She glanced at him. "Like you remembering the sandwich?" He nodded. "Exactly." For a moment, they sat in silence. The wind picked up, tossing paper cups across the gutter. Across the street, Farron's camera clicked again. Then Mara said something that made Ben's shoulders go still. "My teacher says some men who come back don't really come back. Like they leave parts of themselves behind." Ben looked at her slowly. "Did she say that about soldiers?" "No," Mara said. "About fathers. Something passed between them. Unspoken. Heavy." Ben stared at the sidewalk now. "I left everything behind once," he said. "But I wasn't looking for myself." "What were you looking for?" "A reason not to disappear completely." Mara nodded like she understood, even if she didn't. And somehow, that was better than understanding. That night, Farron delivered the first full report to the Shadow Network operating out of Berlin. His message was brief. Hale is not building a community center. He's building a message. And it starts with her. Attached were blueprints, photos, surveillance logs, timestamps. The girl's name was highlighted in red. Mara Elena Mendez. Age, 9. Potential variable. Monitor /contain/disrupt if necessary. 2 days later, the first interruption came. The old community center, the one Ben had promised to rebuild, suffered a break-in. Not random. Nothing was stolen. But every document, every blueprint, every inch of progress was soaked in water. Pages shredded. Electronics destroyed. Ben stood in the middle of the wreckage, arms folded, unmoved. Theo stood beside him, furious. "You know who did this?" "Yes," Ben said. "You going to the cops?" "No." "Why not?" Ben crouched beside the broken printer, picked up a page that had been stomped into the floor. It was a permit. Still legible beneath the boot print. "They already know where I am," he said. "This wasn't about stopping me." "Then what was it about?" Ben stood, holding the ruined page between 2 fingers. "It was about saying hello." That evening, he returned to Mara's apartment with groceries and a pair of new shoes for her. But there was something different in his posture. Something Mara noticed right away. "You're hiding something," she said. Ben raised an eyebrow. "What makes you think that?" "You're quiet like my brother gets when he lies." Ben smiled faintly. "You're very good at this." "I know," she said. He sat down at the table, hands folded. "You remember the story I told you? About walking away?" "Yeah. You said people saw you as a wallet." He nodded. "There's more." Mara waited. "When I left my company, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't sign off. I didn't retire. I vanished. And the board, people I thought were friends, they didn't take it well." Mara tilted her head. "Why?" "Because men like me don't just leave. Especially when we know where the bodies are buried." She frowned. "You mean, like, real bodies?" Ben didn't answer. He didn't need to. Across the city, in a conference room 30 stories above the skyline, 5 men sat in silence around a glass table. No names. Just initials and contracts. At the head sat a man in a navy suit. Older. Clean-shaven. Calm in the way crocodiles are calm. He held a photograph in one hand. Mara, smiling in a school hallway. "She's the key," he said. "We move in 1 week." Another man leaned forward. "What if Hale resists?" The man in the suit looked up. "He won't. And if he does?" He set the photo down gently. "Then we remind him why he left." Back in the apartment, Mara's mother walked into the kitchen with 2 mugs of tea. She handed one to Ben, paused, then said softly, "I don't know what you're involved in. But if it gets close to my daughter." Ben met her gaze. "It already has." 3 black SUVs arrived at dawn. They didn't screech, didn't draw attention. Just idled on the street outside Mara's building with tinted windows and matching license plate frames. Blank, government issue silence. No logos. No questions. Ben was already awake. He stood in the kitchen, dressed in black, sleeves rolled up, a stainless steel mug cooling in his hand. The light from the stove cast just enough glow to touch the knife scar near his left thumb, the only mark on a body too clean for the life he used to lead. He watched from the kitchen window as the doors of the SUVs opened one by one. Men in suits stepped out. No weapons visible. But they didn't need to show them. He knew the posture, the spacing, the stillness. They were from the inside, the part of the system that never had to wear a badge because they owned the people who did. Across the apartment, Mara's mother was already dressed, jacket zipped. She'd felt it, too. That kind of presence didn't need a knock to announce itself. Theo was pacing by the door, clutching his phone. Mara sat on the couch with her coat on, backpack ready, as if they were going to school. But she was staring at Ben. Hard. "They're here for you, right?" she asked. Ben nodded. "And you?" Her mother stepped forward. "Why?" Ben didn't look away. "Because you matter to me." The knock was soft. Then a second, harder one. Ben opened the door before the third. The man standing there was thin, silver-haired, and smiling in a way that didn't touch his eyes. He wore a black scarf tucked neatly into a cashmere coat. "Benjamin," he said. "Finally." Ben leaned against the frame. "They send you now, Malcolm? Must be getting personal." Malcolm's smile didn't waver. "This isn't personal. It's precise." His eyes flicked to the living room. "To be honest, I didn't think you'd get sentimental. But here you are. Toast crumbs, mugs, family vibes. Very quaint." Ben didn't answer. "So," Malcolm said, "here's the moment. You come with us quietly. We leave the girl. We wipe the record. Nobody breathes your name again." "No." Malcolm blinked. That wasn't a choice. Ben stepped out onto the porch, closed the door behind him. "It is if I'm still standing." Malcolm sighed, then motioned. Two of the men flanked him. Ben dropped the mug. It shattered as he moved. Fast. Faster than any of them expected. The first man reached for his sidearm but caught a knee to the throat. The second took a punch that cracked the bridge of his nose and dropped like a stone. Malcolm didn't flinch. Ben didn't chase. He looked him in the eye. "Tell them this. You cross the line again, I won't wait on the porch." Malcolm adjusted his scarf. "I'll tell them." But they already knew. 20 minutes later, Ben had packed 2 bags. One with emergency gear. One with cash. The burner phones were activated. The power to the apartment was cut before sunrise. Theo stared, stunned. "You're making us run?" Ben zipped the bag. "I'm giving you a head start." "We didn't ask for this," Mara's mother snapped. Ben looked at her. "And I didn't ask to still be alive." Silence. Then Mara stepped forward. "Where are we going?" Ben crouched to her level. "Not far. Just somewhere they won't expect you." Mara nodded. She didn't ask if it was dangerous. She didn't ask why people with shiny cars and no names wanted to hurt a kid with nothing but a backpack and second-hand boots. She just picked up her stuffed rabbit and tucked it under her arm. "Okay," she said. "Let's go." They drove north, away from the city, headlights off for the first 5 miles. The air grew thinner. The roads narrower. Pine trees reached out over the road like arms. Ben's contact was waiting in a cabin by the edge of a frozen lake. No phones. No cameras. No connection. Theo didn't speak to him the first day. Mara did. They sat on the back porch, staring at the iced-over water. "Why do they want you gone?" she asked. "Because I know something they buried," he said. "What is it?" Ben glanced at her. Then he reached into his coat. From the inner pocket, he pulled out a small drive. Silver. Unmarked. "This," he said, "is what I took with me when I disappeared." "What's on it?" He looked out at the lake. A map. A list. And a lie so big it holds half this city together. That night, while Mara and her family slept, Ben sat in the kitchen with Everett on a secure line. His oldest friend. The one who'd helped him vanish in the first place. "They found me," Ben said. "I know," Everett replied. "They activated 4 units. That's not for scare tactics. That's for cleanup. They want the girl," Ben said. "They'll make it look like an accident. I won't let that happen." There was a pause. Then Everett said, "You still have the master list?" Ben looked at the drive on the table. "Yes." "Then burn the decoys. It's time to take it public." Ben shook his head. "Not yet. Not until I know she's safe." Everett exhaled. "You won't get another chance." "I know." The next morning, Mara handed Ben a folded note. It was a list she'd written in colored pencil. "Things I want to fix. The playground swings. The bakery roof. My mom's back. That guy on 9th who always coughs. People who disappear. Ben unfolded it slowly. Read it twice. Then looked at her. You don't belong in hiding, he said. You belong in front of the world. She shrugged. Only if they don't shoot. He laughed, but it wasn't really a laugh. And outside the cabin, hidden in the woods behind a tree line, Farron raised his camera one more time. The satellite uplink blinked green. And the photo was sent. In a black room half a world away, a panel of men stared at Mara's image on the screen. She's the fulcrum, said the one in the center. He's protecting her for a reason. Do we remove her? Asked another. No, the leader said. We study her. Then, coldly, every step. The cold lake mist curled around the porch of the cabin like breath from an unseen mouth. Inside, the morning fire crackled, and Mara's mother stirred oatmeal on the stove with slow, steady circles, every movement rehearsed in a silence that had grown heavier since they arrived. Ben sat at the table, elbows on his knees, staring at the silver drive between his hands. I've opened this only twice, he said. Mara sat cross-legged on the floor, still in her pajamas, watching him like she was waiting for a spell to start. Theo leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, jaw tense. Then what are we waiting for? Ben didn't look up. Opening this doesn't just start a fight, it makes it public. It turns every quiet threat into something loud. And final. He looked at Mara now. I've been hunted before. But they've never come after someone like her. Mara shrugged. You think I'm small? No, Ben said softly. They do. And that makes them dangerous. They moved to the back room, where a solar-charged terminal lay embedded in a steel case, bolted into the floor. No Wi-Fi. No traceable data trails. Just direct access, shielded behind encrypted layers Ben had built when he still had access to the most protected systems in the country. He slid in the drive. A silent hum. Then the screen flickered. A blinking cursor appeared. Identity confirmation required. Ben placed his palm on the glass reader. A beam scanned slowly. Then the screen lit up. Dozens of folders. Unnamed, unlabeled, except one. Rigel. He clicked. Mara stood beside him now, staring. A file opened. Blackline Acquisition Memorandum. Top-level internal, Rowan Futures Division. Date, October 9, 2013. Status, sealed by executive order, unauthorized copy. Inside were names. Dozens. Politicians. Developers. School board executives. Charity directors. The names of people who had shaped entire communities, controlled billions in quiet infrastructure projects, and had been paid, quietly, to keep specific districts poor. They weren't just corrupt. They had manufactured decay. Ben clicked on another folder. A redacted blueprint appeared. Mara squinted. What's that? A city overlay, Ben said. All the neighborhoods that were denied upgrades. Construction zones that never broke ground. Parks that disappeared before opening. He zoomed in. One dot blinked near the river. Mara pointed. That's where the bakery is. Ben nodded. And the center. And your school. Theo cursed under his breath. Mara's mother sat down heavily. They choked it on purpose. Yes, Ben said. They turned the entire neighborhood into a controlled failure. Because if it stays broken, it can be sold. Mara looked up at him. Sold to who? Ben clicked again. And there she was. Evelyn Marsh. A grayscale photo. Platinum hair. Cold eyes. High cheekbones that made her look carved instead of born. She's the architect, Ben said. Of everything. Theo frowned. Who is she? A shadow. Former finance minister, now a private operator. She's the one who came after me when I wouldn't sign the final release. The release for what? Ben opened the last folder. Inside were scanned contracts. One in particular was stamped in bold red, Future City Initiative, Sector 12C, Transfer of Control. Mara leaned in. What's Sector 12C? Ben looked her straight in the eyes. Your neighborhood. They'd planned to sell it. Entire blocks. In bundled pieces. Strip out every resource, shut down public services, then replace it all with privately owned institutions, and hike the cost of living so high that families like Mara's would vanish. It wasn't just about real estate. It was displacement by design. Later that night, Mara sat in her room with the list she'd written earlier, the one with the playground and her mom's back and the coughing man on 9th. She added one more line at the bottom. 6. Evelyn Marsh. She didn't ask Ben what would happen if they published the drive. She just asked, "What do we do now?" Ben sat beside her, gently taking the list. "We show the world." The next morning, the plan was set. Ben had an old press contact, Elijah Graves, once a political journalist, now working from the fringes after exposing a state senator's private militia and getting blackballed from every major outlet. He owed Ben a favor. Elijah picked up on the first ring. "You're calling me. That either means you're desperate, or ready." "Both," Ben said. "I hope you like noise," Elijah replied. "Because I'm about to make enough for every spook in D.C. to wake up." Ben paused. "Don't mention the girl," he said. "Not by name. Not ever." "Understood." The leak went live 48 hours later. Elijah's newsletter had fewer than 1,000 subscribers, but within 6 hours, it had been downloaded 4.3 million times. Mirror sites sprang up. Screenshots hit forums. Hashtags trended. And before anyone in power could stop it, the name Rowan Futures Division was plastered across the evening news. Protests erupted outside banks, council buildings, and police stations in 26 cities. And then, just as Ben feared, a different kind of silence fell. The surveillance kind. Back at the cabin, Ben packed again. But this time, it wasn't for retreat. It was for war. Everett arrived that night, breath fogging in the cold, a black case under one arm. "We heard chatter," he said. "They're coming for her." Ben nodded. "Then we don't wait this time." They reinforced the perimeter. Triple-locked every blind spot. And still, just before dawn, the power cut out. Mara woke to a sound she didn't recognize. Glass. Shattering downstairs. Theo ran in. Windows, rear side. Motion sensors down. Ben and Everett moved in silence. Weapons ready. Not to kill. To hold. To buy time. Mara clutched the rabbit in her hands. Her mother pulled her close. Then came the voice. Calm. Mechanical. From a speaker in the trees. "You have 1 minute to surrender the drive." Ben's face was ice. He pulled Mara aside. "I need you to do something." "What?" "Take this," he handed her the real drive, "and go out the hatch behind the stove. There's a trail to the ranger tower. Leave the bag. Run with nothing. But run." Everett looked at him. "You're letting her go alone?" Ben didn't answer. Just met her eyes. "I trust you more than anyone in that room." And then, a second voice came through the trees. Different. Female. Close. "It's too late, Benjamin. She's already chosen." Mara froze. Ben turned slowly. He knew that voice. Evelyn Marsh was here. The wind had picked up. It carried snow in tight, swirling flurries, hissing through the pine trees like something alive. The forest around the cabin wasn't quiet anymore. It pulsed, like it was listening. Mara crouched behind the stove, one hand on the panel Ben had shown her. It was loose now. Behind it, a dark crawlspace opened, barely wide enough to fit her. The silver drive burned cold in her pocket, like it knew what was coming. Her mother knelt beside her, voice low. "Only if something happens. If you hear shouting. If we don't come for you. Then you run. Do you understand?" Mara's lip trembled. She nodded once. Theo passed her the flashlight. You don't turn it on unless it's pitch black. And never point it behind you. Just forward. Why? Theo paused. So you don't give the dark a face. Outside, Ben stood on the porch, one step ahead of the broken door, eyes locked on the tree-line. He saw nothing. He heard everything. Branches cracking under weight. Boots sliding across ice. And that voice again, floating just above the wind. You really think hiding her matters? Evelyn Marsh stepped from the woods like she had grown there. Same platinum braid. Same sharp coat. Her eyes caught the porch light and swallowed it. She wasn't alone. 4 figures moved behind her, silent, armored, heads covered. Ben didn't raise the rifle in his hand. Yet. You're on private land, he said. Please, she replied. You think that matters to me? He took a step forward. You already lost. Lost what? She asked. Control of the city. That was never my aim. She looked toward the cabin window. She's in there. Isn't she? Ben didn't answer. Evelyn smiled slightly. You still think she's a girl. You still think this is about one child with good instincts and a moral compass. But it's not. She took a step forward. She's not a girl, Benjamin. She's a signal. Inside, Everett moved to the rear door and crouched beside the couch. He pulled a small black device from his coat and began to input a code. His hands didn't shake. Mara's mother watched him. What are you doing? Changing the field, he said. We can't win in here. So we collapse it. You're going to bring the cabin down? No, Everett said, smiling grimly. Just the walls they think are real. Ben raised his rifle slowly, aiming it at Evelyn's chest. This ends tonight, he said. Evelyn tilted her head. No, Benjamin. This begins tonight. And then she lifted her hand. A piercing sound rang through the woods, ultrasonic. Mechanical. Bone deep. Ben flinched. Behind her, the masked soldiers surged forward. Inside, the rear door exploded inward. 2 of them. Fully armored. No voices. No names. Everett fired twice. 2 clean centermass shots. 1 soldier dropped. The other kept moving, grabbed him by the collar and hurled him into the wall. Mara's mother grabbed a poker from the fireplace and swung. It cracked against the soldier's helmet, did nothing, until Theo threw a chair full force at his legs and brought him to the ground. Now! Everett shouted, blood trickling from his temple. Mara's mother turned, looked toward the stove. Empty. The panel was open. The girl was already gone. In the woods, Mara ran like she'd done it 1,000 times in her dreams. The path was narrow, overgrown with thorns and branches, but she didn't stop. The rabbit in her coat pocket bounced with every step. The flashlight was cold in her hand. She didn't turn it on. Not yet. She couldn't risk letting them see. Back at the cabin, Ben fought like a man who didn't care what happened to himself. 2 soldiers down. Evelyn untouched. She didn't flinch when his rifle cracked. She didn't move when he slammed the last soldier against the porch rail and broke the beam. She just watched. Like a scientist observing a test subject. When the noise stopped, Ben was bleeding from a cut above his eye, breath ragged. Evelyn stepped over the wreckage and looked him in the face. You always misunderstood the point, she said softly. This was never about you. Ben tried to speak. Couldn't. You were just the courier. She leaned in close. She's the inheritance. Not because of what she knows, but because of what she is. And then, a long, low chime rang in the distance. Evelyn smiled. She's opened it. Mara had reached the ranger tower. She scrambled through the locked door, just as Ben told her, and found the keypad. 4 digits. She punched them in. 1 to 9, 7 to 3. The year stamped on the back of the silver drive. A beep. Then the floor beneath her flickered. Not shook. Flickered. Like a screen glitching. The air around her shimmered. Walls turned faint. Transparent. And something, deep below, began to hum. A pattern. She stepped back. The flashlight clicked on in her hand. Not by her doing. It illuminated something on the wall. A symbol. 3 diagonal lines through a circle. And a word etched faintly beneath it. Vector. Back at the cabin, Evelyn stepped away from Ben, satisfied. You just let her walk into the signal field, she said. Ben's eyes widened. No. Evelyn raised her hand. The treeline lit up, bright white, like the forest itself had been turned inside out. The light wasn't sunlight. It wasn't electricity. It was instructional. Designed to teach, to reshape, to awaken. And only one person had the genetic code to activate it. Mara. She stood alone in the tower, surrounded by flickering walls and ancient data pouring in through her eyes. Images, sounds, sensations she couldn't name. Buildings folding and unfolding. Maps that bent. A voice that sounded both mechanical and familiar. It said one word. Welcome. And miles away, in a hangar deep beneath Geneva, a row of dark machines powered on for the first time in 50 years. One red light blinked. And a voice said, Vector code accepted. Initiating Phase 2. The light inside the Ranger Tower dimmed suddenly, shifting from white to deep blue, cool and steady, like the color of breath caught beneath ice. Mara stood in the center of the circular floor, her feet rooted, her eyes wide. The flashlight had dimmed to a soft pulse, matching something deeper now, her heartbeat. The air vibrated, not with noise, but with data. Lines of unfamiliar symbols danced across the walls, hovering in midair, flickering in arcs of electric blue. They weren't letters. They weren't numbers. But somehow, she understood them. Not in language. In instinct. A voice echoed again, neutral, layered, and calm. Vector user confirmed. Alignment begins. Mara didn't speak. She didn't know how to. Because suddenly, her mind wasn't quiet anymore. Miles away, Ben felt it before he understood it. The sky above the cabin shivered. He staggered from the porch, wiping blood from his eye, staring into the trees. Everett limped beside him, bruised and swaying. Ben, he said, coughing. What was that? Ben's voice was low. She triggered Vector. Everett froze. You told me it was buried. That it was locked behind 10 layers of failsafes. It was. Everett glanced toward the lake, then toward the mountain ridge. But that means. Ben cut him off. It means she's the key. Inside the signal field, Mara blinked as the blue light sharpened. A platform rose silently from the floor. Upon it, a circular object spun slowly, like a disk of liquid steel. As it turned, it projected a 3-dimensional shape into the air above it. A spire, split in 3, surrounded by orbiting spheres. The voice spoke again. Vector protocol, final carrier identified. And then it spoke her full name. First. Middle. Last. Mara Elena Mendez. The name rang out not just in the room, but through something larger. Something waiting. Back in the forest, Evelyn Marsh stood at the edge of the treeline, eyes lifted toward the tower now glowing faintly in the distance. Her soldiers were already gone, vanished like breath against a mirror. Only she remained. And she smiled. They didn't even know what they were guarding, she said aloud. Behind her, a voice spoke through an earpiece. Phase 2 signal detected. Vectors live. Orders. She closed her eyes for a moment. Let it run. But. I said let it run, she repeated, turning back toward the woods. She has to know what she's carrying before we make the offer. In the tower, the platform began to spin faster. The walls flickered like television static. Mara stood motionless, breathing shallow, her fingers curling into fists. Then the lights vanished. Complete darkness. No hum. No glow. No sound. And then, a face appeared in front of her. Not a real one. A projection. It looked like her. Older. But her. The same eyes. Same crooked eyebrow. The figure stepped forward, flickering softly. You made it, the figure said. Good. Mara blinked. Who are you? I'm what comes next. What does that mean? The older version tilted her head. It means you were never supposed to be ordinary. They built this before your mother was born. Before your grandparents. But they knew, someone like you would come. Someone who could see the cracks. Mara shook her head. I don't understand. You will, the figure said. Because what they feared most wasn't war. It wasn't exposure. It wasn't even truth. She stepped closer. They feared empathy. The walls around them lit up with images, real ones. Cities burned for profit. People redlined from healthcare. Water poisoned in places no one watched. And behind each catastrophe, a list of signatures. Men and women who approved it all, quietly. They believed logic would win. That data would bury emotion. That systems beat hearts. The projection's face hardened. But they didn't plan for a child with a sandwich. Mara felt something inside her pulse. A click behind her ribs. Why me? She whispered. The projection smiled. Because you reached out when no one asked you to. Suddenly, the silver disc on the platform rose higher. From it, a beam of light shot into Mara's chest. She gasped, but didn't move. The projection flickered, distorted. Upload complete, it said, voice now mechanical. Vector code accepted. Carrier. Confirmed. And then everything vanished. Ben reached the tower just as the final pulse collapsed inward. He found her kneeling on the floor, blinking slowly, hands still glowing faintly blue. Mara, he said, voice cracking. Are you? She looked up at him. Something in her eyes was different. Not older. Wider. She stood. I saw her, she said. I saw me. But later. Ben knelt. What did she tell you? That they tried to build a future without people. And what did you see? Mara looked out through the broken door of the tower, toward the snow-lit woods. Her voice was clear now. Sharp. Centered. I saw what I'm supposed to stop. That night, Mara sat beside the fire in the cabin, wrapped in a thick wool blanket. The others had fallen into uneasy sleep. But she was awake. In her palm was the silver drive. It was no longer cold. It was warm. Alive. Like it had found where it was always meant to be. And deep underground, beneath cities, data hubs, and decommissioned satellites, systems long forgotten flickered to life. They didn't belong to Evelyn. Or Ben. Or anyone in the government. They belonged to Vector. And Vector now belonged to Mara Elena Mendez. When Vector came online, there were no sirens. No blinking red lights or dramatic countdowns. Only a quiet shift, so small, so elegantly embedded, that entire surveillance networks around the world registered it as a momentary flicker in background radiation. A blip. A rounding error. But inside that rounding error, something ancient awakened. Old code. Long dormant access points. And the final instruction string of a project abandoned decades ago by the very people now hunting Mara. Vector. Variable engine for civic transformation and operational reform. It had been a myth even inside the most classified military archives. Rumored to be a conscious protocol, an AI, a weapon, a failsafe, built during the early digital Cold War to restore societies after collapse. But it was too advanced, too independent, too human. So it was shelved, buried, encrypted with genetic locks. One lock, one user key. And now, after years in silence, it had chosen her. In the cabin, Mara stood in front of the hearth, barefoot, the silver drive still warm in her hand. Ben stood behind her, arms folded, watching with a mixture of fear and reverence. "She's online," he said quietly. Everett entered, wrapped in a blanket, a split lip drying over his teeth. "Who is?" Ben nodded toward her. "Not her. It. Vector. It's fully awake." Everett dropped into a chair. "Christ. I thought that thing was just a theory. An urban legend for old DARPA rejects." "It was real," Ben said. "Is real. But the part no one ever got right was what it was for." Everett frowned. "I thought it was a control system." Ben shook his head. "No. It was built to protect. Not governments. Not borders. People. Neighborhoods. Economies. The idea was that if society collapsed, when it collapsed, Vector would find the one person who would fix it without becoming like the people who broke it." Everett looked at Mara. "She's 9. She's exactly the right age," Ben said. "Not old enough to compromise. Not jaded. Not cynical. She doesn't want power. She wants a swing set that doesn't hurt your hands when it rains. That's why Vector accepted her." Everett exhaled. "So, what now?" Ben's voice dropped. "Now she gets to decide what matters." 20 miles away, in a reinforced boardroom below a corporate shell tower in the city, Evelyn Marsh stared at a holographic display showing cascading data, blueprint leaks, police corruption files, hospital billing scams, city zoning bribery, all pouring from one source. Vector. A digital breach spreading like a whisper. No one could stop it. Because Vector didn't hit networks. It bypassed them. Because Vector didn't hack systems. It replaced them. Every school principal, every local news desk, every non-profit director was suddenly receiving documents directly. Real documents. Untouched. Verified. Delivered with quiet authority. And the name at the bottom of every file? MEM. The world didn't know who that was. Not yet. But they would. And Evelyn knew what that meant. She turned to her aide. "Do we have confirmation on her location?" The man nodded. "Yes. But Hale and Everett are with her. We'll need to move with force." Evelyn turned slowly. "No. We move with grace." The aide blinked. "Ma'am. She's not a threat yet," Evelyn said. "She's hopeful. Hopeful people still believe in the world. That makes them vulnerable. What do? We offer her a seat at the table." Back at the cabin, the radio crackled. It hadn't worked in days. Now it hummed with static, and then, a voice. Refined. Smooth. British. "Mara. My name is Evelyn Marsh. I believe you, and I should speak." Ben reached for the dial, but Mara stopped him. "It's okay." She lifted the receiver. "This is Mara." There was a beat of silence. Then, "You're extraordinary." Mara didn't respond. Evelyn's voice softened. "I imagine you're scared. I would be too. You've activated something no one's touched in half a century. But here's the thing. Vector wasn't meant for one person. It was meant for a council. For balance. For shared vision. I want to help you." Mara's fingers tightened on the mic. Ben whispered, "Don't trust her." Evelyn continued, "You've seen what people in power have done with their silence. But ask yourself, what happens if you become the silence?" Mara blinked. "I don't want control," she said. Evelyn smiled into the line. "Good. Then we'll give you partnership." A pause. "Let me show you what's possible. I'll come alone. No soldiers. No threats. Just a conversation." Mara turned to Ben. He looked terrified. But he didn't stop her. "When?" she asked. Evelyn's voice came back smooth as velvet. "Tomorrow. Sunrise. Come to the garden where it started." Ben frowned. What garden? But Mara already knew. At dawn, they arrived at the broken fence surrounding the old community center. The swings were gone now. the sandbox filled with rotting leaves. The mural faded to shades of sadness. But in the center of the overgrown field, where Mara had once sat with a stranger and given him a sandwich, there stood a bench. And on it, a single flower in a glass jar. Next to it, Evelyn Marsh. No guards. No armor. Just her. Mara walked forward alone. Ben and Everett stayed back. Evelyn rose from the bench, her breath misting in the cold air. "You remind me of someone," she said. Mara raised an eyebrow. "You." "No. Better. Before I learned what this world does to people like us." Mara stepped closer. "Is this when you try to scare me?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "No. This is when I try to keep you from being hunted for the rest of your life." She reached into her coat, slowly, and pulled out a black notebook. "This was mine when I was your age. I wanted to fix the world, too. But I didn't have Vector. I didn't have protection. I had to make deals." Mara said nothing. "I'm offering you a deal," Evelyn continued. "You keep the code. I'll build the infrastructure. You name the changes. I'll make them real. Quietly. Together." Mara looked at the bench. The first place where kindness began. Then at Evelyn. And finally, at the notebook. "I don't want to fix the world," Mara said softly. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "I want to change it." And then, quietly, without waiting for permission, Mara opened the notebook. Inside was a name. One Evelyn hadn't written. One she'd never seen before. Her own. Written in her own handwriting. And beneath it, in small blue light, "Vector transfer complete. Council initiation begun." Somewhere far beneath the Earth's surface, in a chamber untouched by light for 60 years, a console lit up. And 4 new chairs turned slowly to face the center. The seat for the 5th, the one Evelyn had believed was hers, locked shut. And a new voice whispered from the dark. "Carrier chosen. Let the council begin." In the deepest vaults of the Earth, far beyond the reach of governments or satellite eyes, the council chamber came alive for the first time since 1974. It was not carved. It was not built. It was grown. Engineered from adaptive mineral structures, it shimmered in a state between solid and liquid, its curved walls responding to the pulse of its occupants' thoughts. At the center, 5 seats sat in a perfect arc. For now occupied by flickering silhouettes, partial projections, waiting to be made whole. They were outlines, voice prints, half-encoded neural patterns held in stasis for decades. And now, as Mara Elena Mendez stood in a ruined playground with a notebook that should not exist, the 5th chair, the central chair, lit up. Her name appeared above it in glowing light. Mara. Not Elena. Not Mendez. Just Mara. The code had chosen simplicity. It had chosen her. In the broken garden, Evelyn Marsh's face went still. The moment Mara opened the notebook, the atmosphere around them shifted. She felt it, the way a person feels a building tilt under their feet, or a wave about to crash. Something ancient had accepted the girl fully. Evelyn stepped back. "You don't understand what you've just done," she said quietly. Mara's fingers pressed over the page. "I think you don't want me to understand," she replied. Evelyn's lips parted slightly, then closed again. She was calculating, always. But something had faltered behind her eyes now. Not rage. Resignation. "You've activated the council," she said. "Do you know what that means?" Mara nodded. "I get help." Evelyn's voice sharpened. "It means others will come. Others like you. Chosen. And not all of them will care about the world." Later that night, in the cabin, Ben stood with Everett over the central table, the notebook laid open between them. Pages shifted without touch, blue light scanning their faces, forming new files in real time. Mara stood a few feet back, silent, her mother gently rubbing her shoulders. "What does it mean?" she asked. Ben exhaled. "It means you're not alone anymore. Vector has started the second phase. Everett's brow furrowed. What second phase? Ben tapped the console. A projection unfolded above the table. 5 glowing points. 1 now fully lit. 4 pulsing. Each marked with a unique frequency. Ben pointed. These are the council seats. Everett frowned. You're telling me there are others? Yes. Ben's voice dropped to a whisper. And we don't know where they are. The next day, Vector made its first global announcement. Not in words. In actions. In Istanbul, a corrupt housing commissioner was arrested with no warrant, no public tip, just a file sent directly to a young intern in the mayor's office, whose conscience made her brave. In Sao Paulo, buried water treatment plans were delivered anonymously to a university professor who uploaded them to every server in the country before anyone could block it. In Nairobi, 112 school children found brand new tablets waiting on their desks, devices no one had ordered, funded by a forgotten government grant that had never been claimed. Until now, the world called it a miracle. The people who ran it. They called it a threat. At an airbase outside Zurich, the council seats were already being discussed in private briefings. They've activated one, said the man with the scar across his jaw. The girl. Mendez. A woman in uniform leaned forward. Can it be reversed? No, he said. Vector protocol is locked. But if the other seats haven't been chosen yet, there's still time to control the narrative. She hesitated. Or what? He turned slowly. We find the others first. In the cabin, Mara sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the page where her name glowed softly. Every hour, the notebook updated itself, streaming encrypted data that only she could access. Not because it was locked with a password, but because it knew her. Ben handed her a small black box. Inside was a transmitter. Press this if you ever feel afraid. I'll be there in minutes. Mara nodded. But her eyes didn't leave the notebook. Because now, something new was appearing. A message. Council Seat 02. Activation pending. Location. Unknown. Trigger. Courage in the face of silence. Below it, a timestamp began to count down. Midnight. It was ticking. The next evening, in a war-torn suburb of Kharkiv, Ukraine, a boy named Alexei stepped between a soldier and a civilian mother during a house raid. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't run. The soldier stared. Lowered his gun. Walked away. That night, a page appeared on a broken tablet Alexei hadn't charged in weeks. Just a name. Council Seat 02. Claimed. Mara's notebook updated instantly. The second seat glowed. And somewhere in the neural lattice of Vector's deep core, the chamber lit up with 2 full signatures. Evelyn Marsh watched the reports from a mountainside compound above Geneva. No one saw her expression as the second dot appeared. She whispered, "Of course it's the children." Then she stood and spoke to the room. Prepare a list of every candidate under 16 who's committed a documented act of unsanctioned civic resistance in the last 6 months. A pause. And start offering them gifts. Back in the cabin, Ben stared at the screen. This is going to move fast now. Everett leaned forward. What happens when all 5 seats are filled? Ben didn't look away. That's when Vector executes final protocol. And what is that? Ben's voice was hollow. No one knows. Not even the people who built it. Mara turned from the window, her face lit with the glow of the third blinking dot. It hadn't been claimed yet. But it was close. Far away, in a prison cell in Indonesia, a girl was learning how to hotwire a surveillance drone using a piece of chewing gum foil and her dead brother's bracelet. She would press a button the next morning that shut down a spy grid over 400 villages. And Vector would notice. The council was rising. The world didn't know their names. But it would. And it would not be ready. The 5th seat clicked into place at 3:17 Greenwich Mean Time. No announcement. No sound. Just a vibration, subtle, felt more in the bones than the ears, rippling out across 100 hidden points of the vector network. In that instant, 5 pulses aligned across the globe. In Colombia, where a girl named Sophia hacked into her town's corrupt voting registry and restored 8,000 discarded ballots. In South Korea, where a teenager leaked a smuggled USB stick containing camera footage of toxic dumping along a protected shoreline. In Kenya, where an orphan named Eli used solar scrap to rewire an entire neighborhood's power grid after it was cut off during a strike. In Ukraine, Alexei still carried the bullet casing in his pocket. The soldier had left it behind. A reminder of how close silence had come. And in a cabin in the frozen hills of North America, Mara Elena Mendez sat alone by the fire, her rabbit in her lap, and the notebook glowing steadily in front of her. The circle was complete. The council was online. Vector began to hum. But this time, it didn't hum beneath one cabin or one continent. It thrummed across servers, sensors, satellites. The sky above low orbit shimmered as 6 dormant beacons, buried in decommissioned comms arrays, activated after decades of blackout. Old systems came alive with new names attached to them. Not military. Not corporate. Just 5 single identifiers. Mara. Alexei. Sophia. Jean WOO. Eli. Each seat pulsed once. And then came the voice. Not the cold tone of machines. But something new. Something collective. It spoke to all 5 at once. Protocol final. Council confirmed. Human oversight restored. Mara's lips parted. What does that mean? Ben sat beside her, eyes locked on the screen. It means Vector is about to hand you the keys. Keys to what? Ben swallowed. The future. 20 minutes later, across all major news networks, a strange occurrence was reported. Government servers locked. Corporate data vaults sealed. Private wealth accounts across 6 countries temporarily scrambled. No theft. No leaks. Just a single screen displayed everywhere. The world will now be answerable. The logo beneath was unfamiliar to most. A circle split by 3 lines. In Geneva, Evelyn Marsh stared at the wall of monitors, each showing footage of the 5 council members in still images, school ID cards, traffic cams, satellite captures. Children. That's what everyone kept calling them. But Evelyn knew better. Children are fragile, one of her advisors said. They'll buckle. Evelyn smiled faintly. No, she said. They're new. And the world doesn't know how to fight new. She stood slowly, watching the image of Mara fade from one screen and reappear on another. Get me an audience, she said. One last time. In the vector chamber, somewhere beneath the frozen crust of Iceland, a 6th seat appeared. No name. No light. Just a shadow. The chamber pulsed. The walls trembled. Override incoming, said the system. Non-council entity requesting interface. Ben watched the signal from the cabin and paled. It's Evelyn, he said. She's trying to inject herself in. Everett stood. Is that possible? No. But Vector doesn't reject, it tests. He turned to Mara. She's coming to talk to you. They met inside the signal field. A projected space created by Vector, not digital, not physical, but presence made real. It looked like a park, a lake, a bench, the place where it all started. Mara sat with her hands in her lap. Evelyn appeared across from her, not younger, not softened. Still sharp, still controlled. But quieter. You've gone further than I ever did, Evelyn said. Mara nodded. Because I never wanted what you wanted. I wanted control. I want change. Evelyn studied her for a long time. You think you can guide a world that hasn't listened in centuries? Mara looked up. I think if they hear it from someone small, they'll stop yelling long enough to listen. Evelyn exhaled. You've already won. You don't need to speak to me. I'm not here to speak, Mara said. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the rabbit. Held it in her hands. I'm here to remember. The signal field shifted. The park became a network map, billions of connections, spanning every country, every voice. And Vector's final protocol initialized. Transparency. Not destruction. Not revolution. But visibility. From that moment on, every decision made by every system, public or private, that impacted more than 10 people, was now public record. Signed. Stamped. Answerable. The stock market hiccuped. Military leaders scrambled. But no one could undo it. Because the council had no off switch. And they didn't need laws. They had eyes. 2 months later, Ben and Everett sat outside a new version of the community center. Fresh paint. Working swings. A bakery next door with warm bread. No one knew the names of the 5 council members who had made it possible. And that was exactly how they wanted it. Across the world, things didn't become perfect. But small things got better. Quietly. A village well rebuilt. A corrupt mayor ousted. A school fully funded. In every case, no single person claimed credit. But somewhere in the shadows of those actions, 5 young voices guided the system that had been built to heal the world, if the world was finally willing to be honest with itself. Mara stood by the garden, hands in the dirt, planting seeds where the broken fence used to stand. She didn't wear armor. She didn't carry power. She just knew what mattered. She once gave a sandwich to a stranger who had nothing. Now she had something no one else did. A voice, backed by the world's deepest memory. And she was using it to build something that wouldn't just last, but grow.